CEO of MEATCO is now on the line. Good evening to you, Mr. Mwilima.
Good evening. How are you? Good evening, listeners.
Good having you with us. Let's go straight to the arguments being entertained by the Affirmative Repositioning Movement that your practice is discriminatory with regard to your pricing regime, for example. Are you discriminatory?
We're not discriminatory as such. Maybe just to give a background, I think what they are raising are the circumstances around the issue of the red line. And I think their argument is to say that because we provide different prices to the farmers, hence that is discrimination. I think I would want to leave that with the competition commissioner and the authority that basically looks at that. And as MEATCO, we'll be open to engage with them. I think as MEATCO, you see, we are actually happy that the country is debating the issue of inequity in terms of maximizing producer return. We saw this long time ago, and in our strategic interventions, as soon as we picked up this, that's the reason why, number one, the first issue for us was not to look at the pricing. The first issue was to make sure that MEATCO, as a commercial public enterprise, with a public policy objective, basically needed to make sure that we maximize producer return across the country. The first thing we did was to set up what we call the Northern of the Communal Area subsidiary with the employees to drive transformation in the Northern of the Communal Areas. The second issue was basically open the Katima Muro Abattoir and the Rundu Abattoir where we are operating. That is the second phase. The third phase was really to develop markets because access to lucrative markets basically determines the prices in a market economy. Hence, as MEATCO, we drove the process of basically making sure that we expand markets in West Africa. We are engaging with the Middle East. That's how we are going to respond to the challenges of the NCA. As MEATCO, we have done a lot of research to make sure that farmers from the northern of the communal areas, we should be able to implement commodity-based trade and the zoning system that we need to have. Those strategies, they need to be implemented. We already agreed in 2014. Once we implement that, we'll be able to bring about price equity in the country. And as MEATCO, we are championing these processes.
Well, I'm just wondering as to why pricing was never a consideration initially, that it would seem that it is an important aspect to consider first before the market.
You see, we function in the economy in the 21st century whereby basically market pulls production. So the issues of pricing, basically, you need to look at it. So we needed to work with government first to set up the infrastructure we have in the northern of the communal area. The Katima Muro Abattoir, the infrastructure is revamped. The Rundu Abattoir, a new abattoir, is set up. Once you have all this in place, we have done the research. I think we are now at a stage of implementation. If we implement the strategies of making sure that we diversify the market, like MEATCO has driven that process, we implement commodity-based trade across the country, and we also implement the empirical evidence that came out in the recommendation, in the research that was done in 2014, then we'll be able to equalize. So you cannot rush into the pricing strategy before you look at the entire value chain in the beef value chain. That's very important.
Yeah. I'm wondering, what has historically been MEATCO's stance with regard to the removal of the red line, or personally, your stance on that?
We are clear as MEATCO. We are very clear in terms of our stand. Our stand is that we need to decommission the red line. By decommissioning, we mean you don't need to physically remove the fence. You know, we need to be very careful as Namibians. The markets we are operating in right now, whether in Europe, in the US, and China, MEATCO is the only commercial public enterprise at this stage that has penetrated those markets. All African countries are failing to penetrate. Why? It's because the Chinese market, there are certain requirements which you need to meet. And some of those requirements, unfortunately, they have to do with disease outbreaks like the FMD. So we are a responsible citizen. We are responsible leaders. We want to make sure that we decommission the red line without affecting the current accessibility we have in some of the most lucrative markets like the US, Europe, and China. So it's not an issue of being emotional where you are just physically removing the fence. As MEATCO, our position is very clear. The fence should be decommissioned. By decommission, it means let us set up the zoning. We should create a free zone in the northern of the communal area. Once we do that, the products from the NCA can reach the rest of the country. And that's what has been the position of MEATCO. This has been done in Botswana. This has been done in South Africa and many other African countries. We are, especially now that Africa has implemented the Africa Free Trade Area, we can market and trade with fellow Africans. And that's what MEATCO is driving at this stage.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Mulima Mshakabanyi, CEO of MEATCO, we appreciate your time with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Stay tuned.